We don't talk enough about UK rap. And you can see that not just in the sales numbers, but in the sheer lack of stuff online about the history, the roots, the tier lists and the rankings of British rap. A lot of us have always looked at UK like it's some neighboring planet of hip-hop. Not quite as famous, not quite as cool. Who's even out there? Skepta, Stormzy, and lately Central C and drill music, everyone spitting in that British accent, slang you can't understand, these broken, jerky beats you could practically dance over, and it kind of sounds like rap, but not the rap we're used to. And the truth is, UK hip-hop has an incredibly interesting story of its own. Hip-hop landed in Britain back at the start of the 80s, along with American records, breakdancing, graffiti, pirate radio stations. At first, a lot of British MCs tried to sound American, because there just wasn't another model to copy. But by the late 80s and early 90s, you get Demon Boys, London Posse, Silver Bullet, Gunshot, artists who started rapping in their own absolutely unhinged accents about their own problems and their own political reality. Through the 90s, British hip-hop stayed underground, and not that many albums came out. Sound-wise, most of it still leaned more or less to American rap, but the lyrics were something completely different. In parallel, the UK was blowing up its own club genres, drum and bass, UK garage, and right at the turn of the 2000s, that mashup of harsh electronic sounds gave birth to a purely British genre, grime.
I don't wanna hear about punch and food and things. Man don't do those things. On site, thought it was on site, innit? Saw them guys, no shots fired, innit?
That's where Dizzee, Rascal, Wiley, Ghetts show up, and later JME and Skepta. This stuff you could no longer confuse with American hip-hop, even if you tried. So British rap is way more interesting than you think. UK rap is not some add-on to American hip-hop. It's a separate school, a separate language, a separate aesthetic, and in places an absolutely insane level of technical skill. And this video is for all of my UK rap and grime fans who are a little bit sick of listening to the same US rap over and over again. And for those of you who are just curious about rap from other countries. I've already covered French, German and Spanish rap over here. This one's for anyone who finally wants to get their head around UK hip-hop and hear the essentials. Prepping for this video, I listened to around 60 albums, rated them on a 5-star scale, and then picked the 10 best in my opinion. Alright, let's dive into the top of British rap and grime. Let's go! And first up, in chronological order, we've got the 1993 Gunshot album Patriot Games. And I want to start with an album that for me has a very personal story attached to it too. This is one of those British hip-hop albums I listened to as a kid off a CD. Then I forgot all about it, but preparing for this video I re-listened to it. And the second I hit the track 25 Gun Salute, I instantly start rapping along with them. 25 Gun Salute, pum pum! Every single rhyme came flooding back automatically in my mind. Back then, this was something completely new to me. I didn't have any deep understanding of British hip-hop, but I could feel it. These guys rap like they're out of their minds. Gunshot are one of the most important early British hip-hop groups, and Patriot Games is fascinating because even though it borrows the energy of American hardcore rap, it never sounds like a straight copy. Yeah, you can hear the resemblance to Public Enemy and the political rap of that era, but the themes and the atmosphere are heavily localized, all of it in a British context. Imperial history, social tension, racism, police violence. The album Patriot Games is basically an image of war, and pretty much every track carries some military theme. World War III, Year 2000, about the fear of the new millennium, Reign of Terror, about social control. Sound-wise, it's hard, aggressive rap. Fast tempo, no melody, and almost too technical for 1993 and for Britain. This is the album you should start your British rap journey with, because it proves that London had its own very angry, fast, gritty hip-hop too. And next up in the running order, we've got the 1996 Blak, Twang album That Works Southeast. And I'll be honest with you, I'd literally never heard of this dude until I put this album on. And the moment you press play on That Works Southeast, you immediately feel like this record is from New York. This Blak Twang release was recorded in the mid-90s, but because of label problems, it sat unreleased for ages. Very few people knew about it, but true hardcore fans always dig up jams like this. That Works Southeast has a pretty minimalist boom bap beat and a monotone but dark flow with a ton of wordplay. Blak Twang's flow is relaxed but very melodical, like water wearing down a stone, like smooth as fuck.
It's my extracurricular activities range from writing rhymes, committing crimes, and signing on.
There's a huge amount of London realia on this album, and he uses the Cockney rhyming slang, the code language of Londoners from the East End, built entirely on rhymes. For example, in Cockney, go up the stairs becomes go up the apples and pears, because apples and pears rhymes with stairs. So literally you hear a line like I went up the apples and pears, and it actually means I went up the stairs. I mean, sorry for the obvious over explanation for somebody who knows it. Blak Twang also reminds me a little bit of Mos Def in places, his voice and his style, but overall there is nothing unnecessary on this album, just solid bars over simple beats. My favorite track is Entrepreneurs. Alright, on we go, and the next album is the 1999 Roots Manuva album, Brand New Second Hand. If you know anything at all about British rap, you've definitely heard of Roots Manuva. Remember his famous track Witness the Fitness?
Witness the fitness, the prophet living.
Well, Roots Manuva is a London rap classic, and when I put on Brand New Second Hand, the album opened up a portal in front of me into this unbelievably interesting world of British rap. Listening to Roots Manuva, you immediately feel the difference compared to American rap. Britain, or really just London, is its own separate world with its own slang, its own humor, its own stories, and a strange sense of rhythm. The first thing that gets me on Brand New Second Hand is Roots' flow. The British always enunciate every single sound. They take pride in their pronunciation. Think of Central C. But Roots Manuva is a bit different. He raps in this smoky, thick voice, sometimes almost deliberately missing the beat, which creates this totally unique rhythm. That's why he sounds so distinct. The second thing that gets me is the mood of the album. From the very first track, you feel like you're on a London street, and it's already 3 in the afternoon, and it's super dark. Everything's super rainy, dark, basement level, and it's deeply depressing.
It's second nature, I defend them. Rebel routine, I scheme and plot. Ain't no use in stepping if we don't step hard. Let them movements be made, there's goals to be getting.
And over it, he raps on these muffled beats with heavy bass. The lyrics often go to a dark place too. Dangerous city life, paranoia, state control, the feeling that we're all drowning in some dystopia there is no way out of. But that's exactly where the genius of Brand New Second Hand lives. The album isn't trying to be pretty. And as always, there is that superb London slang. On one of the tracks, Roots Manuva goes, I juggle things proper. And you're just like, what? You won't catch half the lyrics of the first listen. And it's for those exact qualities that I love British rap. It's something new and so much cooler. So there you go. Oh, before I forget, I put together a big British rap playlist for you, where I collected the best songs from all 60 albums I listened to. So make sure you check it out, link in the description. And next up, we've got the classic of British rap, or really the seeds of grime. And I'm talking about the 2003 Dizzee Rascal album, Boy in the Corner. Okay, I honestly can't say anything more than this is a totally mind-blowing album. Dizzee Rascal is a genuine innovator of British rap, and without Boy in the Corner, there'd just be no point in making this list at all. That's exactly why every time I compare rap and grime, I always say that these are two different genres, and not the same thing over different beats. Grime isn't just another style of music, it's a London way of life, where a spiced up electronic production gets flooded up with a sharp, chaotic flow. I just described that to you as a random string of words, but if you actually think about it, that's exactly what it is. To an unprepared ear, Dizzee's album is going to sound absolutely dreadful. On top of it, being this strange, completely non-melodic, arrhythmic production, the flow is broken and the lyrics are impossible to understand. On a lot of tracks, it feels like the music was assembled from the wreckage of old video games, sliced up from samples off of random radio stations, with a bit of paranoia and teenage rage thrown in. The French, with their disapproving faces, would call it cacophony. But if you know me well, you know this is exactly the kind of music I value above everything else. I want to hear something I've never heard before. And Boy in a Corner is exactly that kind of genius work you want to keep coming back to. It's an album about a teenager backed into a corner, but instead of staying quiet, he invented a whole new language for an entire generation. Dizzee Rascal was only 18 when the album dropped, but he sounds like he's already lived 3 lifetimes. This is one of the most unique British rap albums, full stop. He's just a rascal, Dizzee Rascal.
Stress on the brain, complaint to the fool. Stress on the brain, complaint to the max. I'm gonna search for big money stacks.
Alright, moving on. And next, let's talk about the 2007 Ghetts album, Ghetto Gospel. And Ghetts, he's the nuclear bomb of grime. This rapper is some kind of a giant engine running at a max speed. He's a tank that just barrels straight at you at 300 kilometers per hour. On Ghetto Gospel, he shows off pure talent and energy. He's fast, hyperactive, and has just an unbelievable presence on the mic. I genuinely haven't heard anything like this before. For me, this is one of the strongest flows in grime, full stop.
I'm a force to be reckoned with. I'll speak my thoughts on anyone's premises, even if it's negative. I show you what a menace is. I do music, shot, and still clean benefit.
And importantly, it's not speed for the sake of speed. A lot of double-time rappers have this problem. They have technical flows, but every song sounds the same. With Ghetts, it's the complete opposite. Ghetto Gospel never wears you out because it's constantly something new. In Ghetts' lyrics, you feel a constant hunger and a need to prove he's the best. You hear it right away on the track Top 3 Selected. And just watch his freestyles, where he tears it up exactly the same way in a live format.
Right now I'm possessed by Esco spirit. Headshot will have a nigga in a close casket. Open it up and fling a red rose in it. Body after body, after body, after body. No death toll limit to the innocent. Nobody getting involved in it. What's that? You look a pom pom. This something goes boom 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 boom.
Out of everyone in this list, Ghetts surprised me the most and showed that not many people can actually go bar for bar with him. Lyrically, Ghetto Gospel is a mix of represent, stories about crime, guilt, family, growing up, paranoia, and fear. The only bad thing about this album is the cover art. And one more thing that really saddens me, that quite recently Ghetts pleaded guilty to killing somebody by dangerous driving and a fatal hit and run, and was handed a 12-year prison sentence. That story doesn't change the strength of the album, but it does add a very dark aftertaste to the story. Anyways, the next album is the 2011 Contact Play Champion Fraff album. This album struck me as a really unusual and immediately reminded me of several American rap groups. First off, the light, humorous atmosphere of this album reminded me of something like Ugly Duckling, De La Soul, The Alcoholics. It's constant humor, but the self-deprecating, self-mocking kind, about being disgusting, filth, and snot. I'm not joking. The song Fingers in Your Nose is literally about boogers, snot, and picking your nose. The album Champion Fraff just sounds like a bunch of super talented MCs who got together, started exchanging bars, and out of that came a genuinely dope release. But somehow it never leaves that bad aftertaste of corny humor. Why? Because the poets in Contact Play rhyme so cleverly and so darkly, and it all sounds even better in a British accent. The bottom line is that this is lyrically a genuinely peak album, and no wonder the rappers from the group are lyrical monsters.
It's your bait flop, Jacob the muddy mind, bunning tie, rubbing my gums with the color white, cutting lines up inside clubs, it's the grubby line.
The thing is, the Brighton rap collective included artists like Jam Baxter and Edward Scissortongue, who later became synonymous with English underground rap. I listened to their solo albums preparing for this list too, and I have to say, it's just top tier. Champion Fraff is a very stylish, very British album, and I especially love the beats. Almost every song from a production standpoint is on a high level. Alright, next up, we've got the 2016 Skepta album, Konnichiwa. Here, I have to admit, I went back and forth on this release, specifically because the alternative to this album was a couple of records by JME, who I also really like. But JME, or for example Kano, have these individual strong tracks, whereas if we're talking about a complete album, Konnichiwa by Skepta is going to be the better one. You've heard Skepta plenty of times. Think of his collab with A$AP Rocky on Praise the Lord, or with Playboi Carti. He's one of the artists who brought grime to a wider audience. The album Konnichiwa is by now a straight up grime classic and probably the most comfortable entry point into the genre for people who used to listen to American rap only. By the time of this album, Skepta was long past being a newcomer. He was a veteran of the scene, a man with history, with experience in the rap and grime industries. But it was this exact record that made him the symbol of a new international interest in grime. And to me, it's genuinely Skepta's best release. Sure, you won't hear the wild production here like on Dizzee Rascal, but there are still some electronic elements, like on the track That's Not Me with JME.
Girls in the front row, girls in the back. Spit one lyric, everybody's like bruh. Flashback to the cold nights in the trap. Now I'm in a new whip, counting a big stack.
What I love most about Skepta is his laid-back grime flow, which is so characteristic of grime specifically. It's a completely different set of techniques you just won't hear in a normal American rap, and Konnichiwa is simply a top-tier release everyone should listen to. Alright, let's talk about the next album. And this is the 2016 Scissor and Lamplighter album, Tell Them It's Winter. I already talked about Edward Scissortongue a little bit when we were on Contact Play, and here we're going to talk about his solo album with the producer Lamplighter. Since I didn't want this list to be too concentrated on old school stuff, I wanted to add something new to it. And the masterpiece that fit the bill was the album Tell Them It's Winter. A lot of Ed's fans consider his best work to be the album Better Luck Next Life. That release with the gorgeous cover art. But Tell Them It's Winter hooked me way more. This album is a completely different mood, unlike anything else on this list. In British rap, people talk a lot about grime, about boom bap, but this is a different lane, more literary, almost art house, and this album is exactly from that category. It's not an album for a party. It's an abstract piece of storytelling you have to listen to alone and ideally on a rainy Sunday.
Polaroid exposures in a roundabout, a speed alert, emotions bouncing out within this crowded house.
This release slowly pulls you into cold, deeply personal world. Here, Ed sounds closer to a poet or a writer than to a classic MC. His lyrics are built not just on rhymes, but on images. Memory, anxiety, depression, aging, everyday details that suddenly become symbols. Lamplighter makes him not just the beats, but atmospheric landscapes. Gray sky, loneliness, cold air, a dark room where everything sounds muffled, similar to a classic abstract American rap albums like Cannibal Ox or Dalek. It's a very unusual kind of rap, and that's exactly why I love it. It's a pretty subjective pick, but give it a listen and tell me what you think. Alright, on we go. And next in line we've got the album from a grime artist, Wiley, and it's his 2017 Godfather album. They don't call Wiley the godfather of grime for nothing. Without him, the genre would look completely different. Together with Kano, Dizzee Rascal, and others, he was at the very source, shaping the sound, and he always stayed the figure the genre's whole history revolves around. But the cool thing about Godfather is that Wiley doesn't present it from the standpoint of an OG or a granddad of the genre clinging to relevance. No, on this album he shows he can still do grime better than most younger artists.
Yo, hit me on the sets cause I grace him. Me and Dizzee made it an occupation. Came from a cancer estate, I know a move, you can name him. I was outside in the cold, it was raining.
But we also have to talk about the uncomfortable context around Wiley. Before it became mainstream, in 2020 he was essentially cancelled after a series of anti-Semitic posts on social media. Wiley was permanently banned from Twitter, Facebook and Instagram for breaking hate speech rules. So he remained a historically pivotal figure of grime, but his legacy after 2020 became a lot more complicated. But back to Godfather. If you want to hear quality grime, check out this set of banging tracks. And I said set or compilation deliberately, because honestly, this album doesn't feel very cohesive to me. The album's sound is very simple. Electronic instrumentals, fast bars, synths, and strong energy. Wiley isn't trying to make soft, trendy pop rap. He does grime the way grime is meant to sound. Highly recommend a listen. Alright, and we've reached the last release for today. And here we're going to talk about the 2021 Little Simz album, Sometimes I Might Be Introvert. I think that at the very least in the 2020s, we can't talk about British rap without mentioning Little Simz. Simz got serious about her rap career in 2015, and in that time, she's released 6 albums. But this 2021 record became her biggest triumph. Music critics fell in love with it, and after it came out, they started adding her albums to every possible ranking of UK hip-hop. Sometimes I Might Be Introvert is a classy, thoughtful album that's fascinating to listen to from a lot of angles. First, the production by Inflow is masterpiece. By the way, Simz took Inflow to court last year for more than £1 million over money he borrowed from her and never paid back. She actually talked about this unpleasant story on her 2025 album, Lotus, but in 2021 they were still working together. You immediately hear how fantastic the production on the album is. Cool jazzy elements, superb sample selection, and even the interludes are just beautiful, like Jams for instance, and you can tell it's high quality. As for the lyrics, this is where Simz reached her full potential, in my opinion. Every story is super interesting to listen to. You sit there listening and it's like you're reading a whole book. Simz shares personal experiences on a lot of subjects, like the absence of her father or the story of how she nearly died. But there are also tracks with a different mood, like Woman, an ode to an African woman.
Niger women got the melanin dripping, LONDON, city girl living.
And to me, that's genuinely the best song on the album. Bottom line, everything here is lavish, and Simz proves she deserves a spot on any ranking, not just of British or female rappers, but, for example, another one of this year's tier lists on the I'm All Ears channel. Alright, that's pretty much it for my top 10 British rap albums. And as always, on the left and right, there are 2 cool videos you can watch. Make sure you check them out. And that's it from me. I'm out.